You know, for thousands of years, a core belief in Christianity has been that Jesus of Nazareth is the rightful heir to King David's throne. The New Testament itself actually lays out the case for this royal bloodline. So today, we're going to dig into that claim, but we're not going to look at it through the lens of faith. Instead, we're treating this as a textual investigation, using the Bible's own rules and its own prophecies as our measuring stick. Okay, let's jump right in.
So what really makes a king, right? Is it just about being born into the right family? Is it a nod from God? Or are there specific, unbendable rules, kind of like constitutional law, that you absolutely have to follow? This question, well, it's right at the heart of what we're exploring today, as we look into one of the most significant claims to a throne in all of human history.
We're going to tackle this like a case file. First, we'll look at the claim itself. Then, we'll test it against 4 major hurdles found in the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh: a really strict bloodline requirement, a potential curse on the family tree, a disputed prophecy, and this unique legal status called Mamzer. After we've weighed all the evidence, we'll just see where the text itself takes us.
So, our investigation kicks off with the foundational argument made in the Gospels, that Jesus' legitimacy as the Messiah is tied directly to his lineage from King David, and that claim is made through his legal father, Joseph. The Gospel of Matthew starts out by carefully tracing this whole family tree, all the way from Abraham down to Joseph. The whole point is to establish this legal right to the throne. But the analysis we're examining today aims to test that very claim against the standards of its own proof text, the Hebrew Bible. The big question is, does the case actually hold up under its own rules?
All right, let's get to our first piece of evidence. This one zooms in on the fine print of the original promise God made to King David. It's a covenant, a divine contract, and as you're about to see, the wording is incredibly specific. The whole key to this covenant is found in the original Hebrew. The promise isn't just for some descendant or a random heir. The text says God will raise up David's seed, that's zera, that shall proceed from your body, mimeka. Now, the argument is that this is totally unambiguous. It means a direct, biological, paternal heir. Not an adopted son, not a stepson. It has to be a direct, physical descendant from the father. And this is where you see the central problem, laid out side by side. On one hand, the New Testament uses Joseph's royal family tree to make its case for the throne. But on the other hand, it explicitly says Joseph was not the biological father, and that the conception was of the Holy Ghost. So the critical point here is that the very story used to explain Jesus' divine origin seems to cut the one biological cord required by the Davidic covenant.
Okay, but let's just park that for a second. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, we ignore the whole biological thing and accept the legal lineage through Joseph. Well, that leads us straight to a second, and maybe even more definitive disqualification hiding in plain sight in that very same family tree.
If you look right there in Matthew chapter 1, verse 11, the genealogy lists a king named Jeconias. Now, you might just skim past this name. It seems like just another name in a long list of begats. But this specific king is a massive red flag when you cross-reference it with the prophetic books of the Tanakh.
And this is why that name is a bombshell. The prophet Jeremiah lays down this absolutely devastating and permanent curse on King Jeconias and his entire family line. No man of his seed shall prosper, sitting on the throne of David. This isn't just a temporary problem. It's a divine, eternal disinheritance. That entire branch of the family tree is barred from the throne, forever.
To put this in a way we can all get our heads around, think about the British monarchy. Back in 1936, King Edward VIII abdicated the throne. By doing that, he and any kids he might have had were legally removed from the line of succession. His branch of the family was just cut off. According to the prophet Jeremiah, the exact same thing happened to Jeconias. So by putting him in the genealogy, the New Testament places Joseph, and by extension Jesus, in a line that was biblically disqualified from ever ruling.
All right, let's shift gears to the third major pillar of the New Testament argument, the famous prophecy of a virgin birth. The Gospel of Matthew actually quotes the prophet Isaiah, saying he foretold this miracle. But the source material we're looking at argues that this whole idea is based on a critical change in translation.
See, in the original Hebrew text in Isaiah, the word used is ha-almah, and that just means the young woman. Now, The Hebrew language has a very specific word for a virgin. It's betula. Isaiah uses that word in other places, but he doesn't use it here. The argument is that by translating Alma as virgin, the meaning was fundamentally changed, which created a prophecy of a miracle where the original text was just describing a normal, everyday event. So what was actually going on when Isaiah said this? Well, the context is everything. This wasn't some prophecy about a Messiah centuries in the future. It was an immediate sign for a really worried king, King Ahaz. It was a promise that before a local young woman's child was old enough to know right from wrong, the enemy kings threatening Judah would be gone. According to Jewish tradition and the historical context, this prophecy was given and fulfilled right then and there in the 8th century BCE.
Okay, so now we get to our last point in this textual analysis. And honestly, this one is maybe the most personal and socially devastating of all. It's about a specific legal status in Jewish law that, according to the source, would come directly from the New Testament's own story of Jesus' birth.
The word we need to understand is mamzer. Now, this isn't just a slur or an insult. It is a precise legal category in Jewish law, or halakha. It refers to a child born from a forbidding relationship, specifically a child born to a married woman whose father is not her husband.
So, the legal argument, based entirely on the New Testament's own story, goes like this. First, Mary was betrothed to Joseph, and in Jewish law, betrothal was a binding marriage. This means any relations with another man would be considered adultery. Second, the text is crystal clear that Joseph was not the biological father. From a strict legal point of view, that combination, a child born to a married woman from a father who isn't her husband, results in a very specific classification, Mamzer.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just a label. The consequences were huge, and they lasted a lifetime. A mamzer was basically a marital pariah, forbidden from marrying into the mainstream Jewish community. The source we're looking at suggests this could offer a practical, non-divine reason for why Jesus never married. It also gives us a totally new way to look at his constant, sharp conflicts with the religious authorities, the very people who would have enforced this painful status, who he accused of binding heavy burdens on others. Okay, so let's pull all 4 of these threads together and see what the textual verdict is, according to this specific line of analysis. So, just to quickly recap the 4 major hurdles we've looked at. The covenant's demand for a direct paternal seed was a biological test that the New Testament itself says wasn't met. The legal lineage that is offered runs straight through King Jeconias, a branch of the family tree that was divinely cursed and banned from the throne. The prophecy of a miraculous birth seems to be based on a mistranslation of an event that was fulfilled centuries earlier. And finally, the birth narrative itself legally creates the status of mamzer, which was a huge social disqualifier. The final verdict from this particular analysis is, well, it's pretty blunt. When judged strictly by the laws, prophecies, and legal standards of the Hebrew Bible, the very text the New Testament claims to fulfill, the case for Jesus as the heir to David's throne is presented as untenable on multiple fronts.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? It's just a powerful reminder of how the translation and interpretation of ancient texts, sometimes hinging on the meaning of a single word, can echo through history, shaping the very foundations of civilizations and belief systems that touch billions of lives, even today.